Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite or most influential gateway books. So what I mean by that is there are some books that have really opened up new genres to me or new kinds of books that I really want to share because I just think it's really interesting and fun to look at some of the choices that you have made in your reading life that led you to maybe your favorite genre or to an author that you never would have picked up if you hadn't read something like this book. I just thought this was like a really interesting idea, so I thought I would share some of mine. And maybe you guys have read some of these, maybe they can get you into a genre that you haven't tried before, but I love being proved wrong sometimes with my reading choices, so let's talk about some of those. So first off, for the longest time, I hated science fiction. I was a fantasy girl through and through. I kind of resented the fact that it was always grouped together or that people seemed to think they were interchangeable, which honestly I still think is kind of weird, but whatever. But I just never liked any science fiction. I had tried it before and I hated everything I'd read from there pretty much, so I had pretty much written it off as a genre. It's just not for me. I'm not gonna read it. So I just ignored that section of the library every time I was there. But I kept walking past this book, Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I kept being interested because it's like Cinderella, but she's got a cyborg foot. Like, what is that? I can't even tell you how many times I almost checked this book out. Like, I almost took it home and read it, but at the last minute I was always like, no, I know that I don't like science fiction, so I won't like this. Finally, I guess I had gotten through enough of the other books in the library that I felt like I didn't really have a lot of options left, so grudgingly I checked this book out. And I loved it. I flew through this book. I flew through the next couple books in the series that were out at that point. Pre-ordered Winter when it was finally announced, which was a couple years later. And now I really, really love science fiction as a genre. I think this was actually a really great place for me to start because even though there are definitely science fiction elements in this book, there's also a lot of like fantasy or like fairy tale retelling, obviously, parts that are in this story too, which was something that I did already love. So I think it's good when you're maybe trying to explore a new genre, kind of look for those boundary books, you know, ones that have a little something that you already know you like in books and then a little something that you're kind of wanting to see, like you want to explore. I'm just really glad that I picked this book up because this is now one of my favorite series, and I don't know when I would have ever given science fiction another chance if I hadn't suddenly decided to read this book. So my next genre I'm going to talk about is contemporary. That's another one where for the longest time I had read some books and I didn't like them, so I decided I just didn't like that genre. And I think the reason for this was that up to that point, I hadn't read any contemporary books that I had really like emotionally connected with as much as a book that wasn't set in our world. I also just really loved the escapism of reading, so I did not understand why you would want to read a book that took place in our world. I was kind of the mindset that like if there weren't fairies and magic and people doing things way cooler than in real life, what was the point of reading about it? So that combined with the whole emotional connection thing, I didn't like contemporary. I tended to avoid it when I saw it in bookstores or libraries. And then I started hearing really good things about Melina Marchetta. And this is her book Saving Francesca, which is the only contemporary book of hers that I've read, but I've read two of her fantasy novels that I love as well. But this is such a short book too. But this novel really just punches you in the heart in like the best way possible. I remember like picking it up on a whim. I might have stayed up to finish it before I went to bed, so like read this in like less than a day. But I loved this book. I loved the characters. I was so invested in this very like ordinary kind of story, but also not ordinary at all. And there were so many like heartbreaking moments in it. There were some like amazing moments of friendship and family relationships and the way that people help each other go through hard times and the way that sometimes you feel like you can't help people you love. And I finished this book and I was sobbing into into the pillow on our couch. Like I just could not believe that such a short book and such an ordinary book, like something in our world, could affect me so deeply, and I love this book. Highly recommend it if you can't tell. And even though contemporary is still not one of my most reached for genres, I've really found, since reading this book, I've really found a few other books that really just speak to me. So again, I'm just really glad that I happened to hear good things about Melina Marchetta and decided, yeah, okay, fine, I'll give it a try. Loved it. So next I'm going to talk about Angel Fall by Susan E. This is like a post-apocalyptic angel, paranormal, adventure, lots of stuff going on in this book. So this really is a combination of genres that I wasn't really interested in. I do not like dystopian, not even a big fan of like paranormal or urban fantasy, and nothing about this would have appealed to me if I hadn't heard amazing things about the series. But this book really taught me that depending on the other genres that something is mixed with, you can still love a book even if you don't love that particular genre. So like Cinder sort of eased me into science fiction by primarily being like a fairy tale science fiction. This book didn't change my mind about dystopians. That's still not something I really enjoy. But before reading this book, I would never have even considered picking something up that was dystopian or post-apocalyptic. Like, it almost didn't matter what the rest of the story was because I knew I hated that. But this book was so good. Like, it was so funny that multiple genres I didn't like combined into one of the most addictive series that I've ever read. And finally, the last book I'm going to talk about today is Above Us Only Sky by Michelle Young Stone. This is again sort of an overlapping genre situation because I don't gravitate towards magical realism or family sagas. Especially family saga, like if I see like generational story, like follow these people's lives across like generations. If I see that in a book summary, I'm like, not for me. I just don't tend to enjoy that because I find that inevitably I care about one character more than all the others. Basically 3/4 of the book I don't enjoy because we're not actually following the character who I think should be the main character. This book really changed my mind about that. Again, kind of like Angelfall, where I still don't seek out family sagas or family like generational stories, but I'm not going to overlook something that sounds like I would enjoy it just because I see that kind of deal breaker synopsis. And it follows a girl who is born with wings and some of the women in her family, and it sounds kind of similar to The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton, I think. I also read that one and I didn't really like it. I don't feel like these books are that similar besides on the surface, but this one is just so beautiful and heartbreaking. And a big element of this story, at least for one of the women that we're following, is the horrifying treatment of Lithuania by the fascist powers in World War II. Before reading this book, I really didn't know the specifics about how badly these people were treated and the horrifying things that were done to them during the Second World War. And I think that Michelle Young Stone does a fantastic job of balancing that really heavy content and heavy material with really beautiful stories about like love and family and friendship. I was so invested in these women and hoping things were going to turn out for them, and there are still scenes from this book. I read this a few years ago. There are still scenes where if I just think about them, I could start crying because of how emotionally and evocatively they were told, and I cannot recommend this book enough. Maybe you are a big fan of magical realism or family dramas and that sounds like something you would like, but even if you're not, like me, I think you could still really enjoy this book, and I am so glad that I read it. Okay, you guys, so that was kind of my combination book chat recommendations, I don't know what video, just sharing some books that opened new horizons of literature to me. It just makes me so happy to know that my reading comfort zone or my reading happy place is a constantly moving target, and that you don't have to move away from your favorite genres in order to like expand your reading taste and to start trying new things. And there's lots of books I try where I'm like, okay, this genre experiment did not work. Then sometimes, later you might pick up something else from that genre and it really works for you. Please let me know in the comments some books that you have read that you think were gateways or kind of gateway books to other genres. I would really love to hear that, and let me know what you guys thought of this video. If you like this idea, if you think it's interesting. I'm always trying new things, so I probably have a few other books that I could talk about in a video like this sometime down the road. So let me know if that's something you would like to see. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!